My name is Max Thompson, and I'm lying here on this cold concrete floor wondering if that old saying is true. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Maybe I'm just too broken now, too set in my ways of loving people who leave me behind. Day 547. In this place, the Branson Hills Animal Sanctuary, they call it, though there ain't nothing sacred about watching hope die one kennel at a time. Through these chain-link walls, I heard Sarah whisper to Dr. Martinez about final decisions for us long-timers. Her voice cracked when she said my name. When it rains, it pours, that's what my Tom used to say. And brother, it's been a downpour since October 2022. A visitor just walked past. And Lord have mercy, that scent hit me like a freight train. Old Spice aftershave, same brand Tom wore every morning for 7 years. My tail twitched first time in months, but the stranger kept walking toward the puppy section where hope still lives. I closed my eyes and let that familiar smell drag me back to better days, when I believed love lasted forever. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. That aftershave smell took me straight back to spring morning 6 months before Tom passed, back when our biggest worry was whether the fish were biting at Table Rock Lake. Tom would wake me at sunrise with that gentle hand on my head, same way he'd done for 7 beautiful years. "Come on, old boy," he'd whisper, careful not to wake the neighbors. "The base are calling our names." We'd drive down to the water in his old Ford pickup, windows down, country music playing soft on the radio. Tom would hum along to George Strait while I stuck my nose out the window, drinking in all those morning smells due on grass, bacon cooking somewhere, and always that Old Spice cologne that meant safety and love. But that particular morning was different. Tom's phone kept buzzing during our walk along the shoreline. The caller ID read Nurse O'Brien, and each time it rang, Tom's face would get this strange look, part wonder, part worry. "Probably about my old medical records," he muttered, declining the call for the 3rd time. "Some nurse from way back when, checking on how I'm doing." But his hands shook when he said it, and Tom's hands never shook unless something was eating at him deep. Finally, he answered. I couldn't hear much of the conversation, but I caught fragments. 15 years ago. Thought you should know. Never forgot what you did for me." When he hung up, Tom sat heavy on our favorite fallen log and buried his face in his hands. I nudged his elbow with my nose, the way I always did when he needed comfort. "Max, boy," he said, scratching behind my ears. "Sometimes angels come in scrubs. You know that there was this nurse, Nurse O'Brien, who saved my life back in '07, performed CPR on me when my ticker gave out. Never got to properly thank her." His voice got thick with emotion. "Been carrying her kindness in my heart all these years." Tom pulled out his old leather wallet and showed me a faded hospital bracelet he'd kept all this time. Catherine O'Brien, RN, was printed on it in tiny letters. "Good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll have many more mornings like this," Tom said, but there was something in his voice that sounded like goodbye. "But Max, if something ever happens to me, I need you to remember, there are still good people in this world. Angels who show up just when you need them most." I pressed closer against his leg, not understanding why he sounded so sad on such a perfect morning. The sun was painting the water gold. The fish were jumping. And we had nowhere else to be but right there together. If I'd known it was one of our last peaceful moments, I would have paid better attention to every second. Here in this kennel, as darkness settles over the shelter like a heavy blanket, I find myself wrestling with questions that would make a philosopher's head spin. Should I trust again? Can I risk opening what's left of my battered heart to another human being? Or am I just setting myself up for another fall that might finally break me for good? Tom used to say, "Max, a dog's love is the purest thing on God's green earth." But lying here on this thin mat, surrounded by the echoes of other abandoned souls, I'm starting to wonder if that purity is actually our greatest weakness. Maybe we dogs are just too damn loyal for our own good. I've been thinking about loyalty a lot these past 547 days. What is it? Really? Is it that unwavering devotion that makes us wait by the door long after our people have stopped coming home? Is it the way we forgive instantly, completely, no matter how many times we're let down? Or is it something deeper, something that makes us keep believing in love, even when all evidence points to heartbreak? The truth is, I've watched a parade of humans walk past my kennel for over 18 months now. Families with their bright smiles and excited children, young couples holding hands and whispering about the perfect addition to our home, elderly folks moving slowly but with purpose. They all stop at the puppy section. They coo over the mixed breeds with their floppy ears and endless energy. But when they reach the senior section, when they see dogs like me with gray muzzles and eyes that have seen too much, they suddenly remember they have somewhere else to be. I understand their logic, I suppose. Who wants a dog with baggage? Who wants to inherit someone else's grief, someone else's memories? They want blank slates, fresh starts, puppies they can mold into their perfect companions. They don't want dogs who wake up whimpering from nightmares, who flinch when voices get too loud, who take weeks to trust that the food bowl isn't going anywhere. But here's what they don't understand. We older dogs love differently, deeper. We've learned that every moment is precious because we've felt the sting of loss. We don't take belly rubs for granted or assume that morning walks will last forever. We love with the desperate gratitude of souls who know how quickly everything can disappear. Still, as I listen to the sounds of the shelter settling into night, the soft whimpers from the kennel next door, the distant hum of fluorescent lights, the occasional car passing on the highway, I can't help but wonder if I'm fooling myself. Maybe Tom was wrong. Maybe loyalty isn't a virtue at all. Maybe it's just stupidity dressed up in noble clothes. The old saying goes, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me." Well, humans have fooled me more times than I can count. Tom's death wasn't his fault, but what came after that was all on the people who were supposed to care. Stephanie, his daughter, who looked me in the eyes and promised she'd find me a good home, then dumped me here like yesterday's garbage. The family who almost adopted me last Christmas, but changed their minds when they realized I wasn't spirited enough for their kids. The elderly man who spent an hour with me in the visitation room, filling out paperwork, only to leave when his son convinced him that a dog my size was too much responsibility. Each betrayal cut deeper than the last. Each false hope made the next disappointment more devastating. And yet, here I am, still hoping, still believing that somewhere out there is a person who will see past my gray muzzle to the faithful heart underneath. Is that loyalty or masochism, devotion or delusion? Tonight feels different, though there's something in the air, a tension that makes my fur stand on end. Earlier, I heard footsteps in the administrative office, hushed conversations behind closed doors. Sarah, the volunteer who's been my only consistent source of comfort, avoided eye contact during the evening feeding. Even Dr. Martinez, who usually stops to scratch my ears, walked past my kennel without a glance. Then I heard a voice that made my blood run cold. Stephanie's voice, floating down the hallway from the lobby. She was here, at this hour, talking to someone about arrangements and final decisions. I pressed my ear against the kennel door, straining to catch her words. "Been over a year and a half," she was saying. "Nobody wants an old dog with issues. It's not fair to keep him suffering like this. Sometimes the kindest thing—" My heart started pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I knew that tone, knew what those carefully chosen words meant. I'd heard similar conversations about other long-term residents who had mysteriously disappeared from the shelter. Dogs who were here one day and gone the next, their kennels quickly filled with newer, younger, more adoptable animals. The realization hit me like a physical blow. They're going to put me down. After 547 days of hoping, of believing that love would find me again, they're going to give up on me. The betrayal isn't just that I'm unwanted. It's that they're going to rob me of the chance to prove I still have love to give. I think about Tom's words that morning by the lake. There are still good people in this world, angels who show up just when you need them most. But where are those angels now? Where are the good people when a faithful dog is facing his final judgment? Maybe Tom was wrong about angels. Maybe he was wrong about everything. But even as despair threatens to drown me, something stubborn in my chest refuses to surrender. Maybe it's that foolish loyalty Tom praised so much. Maybe it's the memory of his gentle hands and kind words. Or maybe it's something deeper, a spark of hope that refuses to be extinguished, no matter how many times it's been stomped on. I think about all the love I still have stored up inside me, all the walks I could take, all the belly rubs I could give in return for simple affection. I think about lazy Sunday mornings and shared meals and the way I could make someone feel less alone in this world. I have so much to offer. If only someone would give me the chance. Tomorrow, they say, I'll have visitors. The word evaluation keeps floating around, spoken in whispers like a curse. But I've decided something in these dark hours. If this is my last chance, I'm going to take it. I'm going to put everything I have left into hoping one more time. Not because I'm naive or because I haven't learned from my pain, but because love, real love, is worth the risk. Tom was right about one thing: a dog's love is pure. It's pure because it's given freely, without conditions, without guarantees. It's pure because it believes in second chances and third chances, and as many chances as it takes. And if that makes me a fool, then I'll be a fool with my tail wagging and my heart open, because tomorrow an angel might walk through that door, and I intend to be ready. That memory came flooding back as I heard Stephanie's voice in the lobby, the night everything changed forever. October 15th, 2022. A Tuesday that started like any other. but ended with my world crashing down around me. Tom had been unusually quiet during dinner that evening. Usually, he'd tell me about his day, share stories from his firefighting years, or read snippets from the newspaper aloud while I lay at his feet. But that night, he just sat in his old recliner, staring at the phone in his lap like it might bite him. "Got another call from that nurse today." "Max?" he said finally, his voice heavy with something I couldn't identify. "Catherine O'Brien. Turns out she's been trying to track down some of her old patients. Says she never forgot about that night in '07. He paused, scratching behind my ears absently. "Funny thing is, I never forgot about her either." The phone rang just as he finished speaking. Tom glanced at the caller ID and his face went pale. "Stephanie," he muttered. But there was no warmth in his voice like there used to be when his daughter called. "Hello, sweetheart," he answered. But I could hear the weariness in those two words. Even from across the room, I could hear Stephanie's voice through the receiver, sharp, demanding. Nothing like the gentle tones Tom used with me. "Dad, we need to talk about your finances. I've been looking at your accounts. And frankly, I'm concerned about some of your spending habits." Tom's jaw tightened. "My spending habits are just fine. Stephanie, I'm not senile. That's not what I meant. Dad, it's just—" She paused. And when she continued, her voice had that fake sweetness that made my fur stand on end. "I noticed you've been setting aside money in some kind of special account. For Max's care, according to the bank statements. Dad, that's $50,000. That's my inheritance you're spending on a dog." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Tom's hand stilled on my head, and I could feel the tension radiating from his body. "That money is for Max's future," Tom said quietly, but there was steel underneath the softness. "When I'm gone, he'll need medical care, good food, maybe even training if he has behavioral issues from losing me. Dogs grieve too. Stephanie. And they deserve to be taken care of." "Dad, be reasonable. It's an animal. When you're gone, I can find him a nice family. Or if that doesn't work out, there are shelters." "No." The word came out like a gunshot. Tom sat up straighter, and for a moment, he sounded like the firefighter who'd run into burning buildings to save strangers. "Max is not going to any shelter. That money stays in his account, and whoever takes care of him will have everything they need to give him a good life." "You're being ridiculous," Stephanie snapped, her fake sweetness evaporating. "I have children. Dad, your grandchildren. They need college funds, not some pampered pet living like a king while we struggle." "You're not struggling, Stephanie. Your husband makes good money. Your kids are fine, and you know it. This isn't about need, it's about greed." Tom's voice was shaking now, but not with weakness, with anger. "I spent 30 years saving people from fires, and the one thing I learned is that you find out who people really are when everything's burning down around them. How dare you?" "I dare because it's my money, my dog, and my decision. Max has been more loyal to me in 7 years than you've been in 45, at least when he looks at me. I don't see dollar signs in his eyes." The line went quiet, except for Stephanie's sharp breathing. When she spoke again, her voice was cold as winter rain. Fine, Dad. But don't come crying to me when you realize you've thrown away your daughter's future for an animal that won't even remember you 6 months after you're gone. The line went dead. Tom stared at the phone for a long moment, then set it aside and buried his face in his hands. "I'm sorry you had to hear that, boy," he whispered. "Sometimes blood ain't thicker than water after all. Sometimes it's thin as greed and twice as bitter." I pressed my body against his legs, offering what comfort I could. Tom's hands were shaking as he reached for me, and when he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "You know what, Max? Maybe I should change that will tonight. Make sure there's no confusion about what I want." He stood slowly, wincing at the arthritis in his knees. That nurse Catherine, she sounded like she understood what it means to care for someone. Maybe I should give her a call, see if she'd be willing to. That's when it happened. Tom took 2 steps toward his desk, then stopped. His hand went to his chest, and his face twisted in pain. "Max!" he gasped, reaching for his chair but missing it completely. I was on my feet instantly, barking as loud as I could. Tom collapsed to the floor, his breathing shallow and rapid. I ran to him, licking his face, pawing at his chest, trying desperately to wake him up the way I did every morning. "Come on, Tom," I whined, nudging his shoulder with my nose. "Come on, wake up. We've got fishing to do tomorrow. Remember, you promised we'd try that new spot near the marina." But Tom wasn't responding. His eyes were closed, and his breathing was getting weaker. I barked until my throat was raw, threw myself against the front door, scratched at the windows, anything to get someone's attention. But we lived on a quiet street, and it was past 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. I spent the longest hours of my life lying beside Tom, pressing my warm body against his cooling one, talking to him in the language that only he understood. I told him about all the walks we'd take when he felt better, all the fish we'd catch, all the quiet evenings we'd spend together in his recliner. I promised to be the best dog in the world if he'd just open his eyes and scratch behind my ears one more time. But Tom was gone. I think I knew it before the sun came up, before the neighbor found us the next afternoon, before the paramedics pronounced what my heart had already accepted. The man who'd given me 7 years of perfect love, who'd defended me against his own daughter's greed, who'd set aside his own future to secure mine, he was gone. The paramedics were gentle with both of us. One of them, a kind woman with gray hair, knelt beside me after they'd taken Tom away. "You stayed with him, didn't you? Boy," she said softly. "You didn't leave his side. That's what love looks like." But I had left his side, hadn't I? If I'd been smarter, if I'd been trained better, maybe I could have gotten help in time. Maybe I could have saved him the way he'd saved so many people during his firefighting days. Maybe his last words wouldn't have been about changing his will to protect me. Maybe they would have been about how proud he was, how much he loved me, how he wasn't ready to say goodbye. When Stephanie arrived the next day, she was crying real tears. I could smell the grief on her, mixed with something else I couldn't identify. Guilt, maybe, or regret. She knelt beside me and buried her face in my fur. "I'm so sorry, Max," she whispered. "I said terrible things. I didn't mean them. I love Dad. I do. I just—" She pulled back, wiping her eyes. I don't know how to take care of you the way he did, but I promise I'll find you someone who will. Looking back now, from this cold kennel where promises come to die, I wonder if Stephanie really meant those words in that moment. Or if the guilt was just temporary, washed away as soon as she started thinking about that $50,000 sitting in an account with my name on it. Tom's funeral was beautiful. Stephanie let me stay by the casket, and half the fire department came to pay their respects. But when the service was over, when the last handshake was given and the last casserole was delivered, reality set in. "I can't keep you, Max," Stephanie said, not meeting my eyes. "My apartment doesn't allow pets, and even if it did, I work 60 hours a week. You need someone who can give you the attention you deserve." 2 weeks later, she brought me here, to this place where hope comes to die. "It's just temporary," she promised as she signed the surrender papers, "just until I can find you the perfect home." That was 547 days ago, and now she's back, talking about arrangements and final decisions. Seems like some promises aren't worth the breath they're spoken with. The morning sun streaming through the shelter windows feels different today, harsher somehow, like it's illuminating all the broken promises and shattered dreams that live in this place. Sarah's footsteps echo down the corridor, accompanied by the rustle of official paperwork. I can smell the fear on her, mixed with something that might be determination, or maybe just resignation. She stops at my kennel, clipboard in hand, and her eyes are red-rimmed like she's been crying. "Hey there, Max," she whispers, crouching down to my level. "We've got some visitors coming today." "Important ones?" "Important. That's code for final evaluation. I've heard this speech before. Watched other dogs get the same gentle preparation for what comes next." My stomach churns, but I force myself to meet her gaze. If this is the end, I won't go out cowering. The sound of voices in the lobby pulls me back into memory, back to those final weeks with Tom, when the arguments with Stephanie became a regular evening entertainment. She'd call right around dinner time, like she knew exactly when to ruin our peaceful moments together. "Dad, you're being completely unreasonable about this inheritance situation." Stephanie's voice would slice through the phone speaker. Tom had started putting her on speakerphone. I think he wanted me to hear, wanted someone to witness what his own daughter had become. "What's unreasonable is a daughter who sees her father as nothing more than a bank account," Tom would reply, his voice steady but tired. "I worked my whole life for that money, Stephanie. I get to decide how it's spent. You're throwing away my children's future $50,000. Dad, that's half my son's college fund, and you want to waste it on a dog." Tom's hand would find my head during these conversations, his fingers working through my fur like I was his anchor to sanity. "Max isn't a waste, sweetheart. He's been better company than most humans I know, more loyal than most family I know." The barb would hit its mark every time. Stephanie's voice would get sharper, more desperate. "Family. You're choosing an animal over your own blood, over your grandchildren." "I'm choosing love over greed," Tom would say quietly. "There's a difference." But those conversations took their toll. I could see it in the way Tom's shoulders sagged after each call, the way he'd sit in his recliner staring at nothing for long minutes afterward. He'd tell me stories during those quiet moments, stories about the fires he'd fought, the people he'd saved. the way Stephanie used to be before money became more important than love. She wasn't always like this. Max, he'd say, scratching behind my ears. When she was little, she'd help me wash the fire truck on Saturdays. Had this laugh that could light up a whole room. Don't know where that little girl went. I remember one particular evening, maybe 3 weeks before Tom passed, when the argument got especially heated. Stephanie had found out about Tom's conversations with Catherine O'Brien, the nurse who'd saved his life years ago. Who is this Catherine woman? Dad? Why are you suddenly talking to some random nurse from 15 years ago? Tom's face had softened when he mentioned Catherine's name. She's not random. Stephanie. She saved my life when I had that heart attack in '07, performed CPR for 20 minutes straight. The doctors said if she hadn't been there, if she hadn't refused to give up. He paused, lost in the memory. I owe her my life, and by extension, I owe her all the years I got to spend with Max. So, now you're planning to leave my inheritance to some stranger. This gets more insane by the day. I'm planning to make sure Max is taken care of, Tom had said firmly. Catherine understands what it means to fight for a life. She understands that every life has value. Even the four-legged ones. You're losing your mind. Dad, I'm going to have to talk to a lawyer about getting power of attorney. You're not competent to make these decisions anymore. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Tom's grip on my fur tightened. And when he spoke, his voice carried the authority of 3 decades fighting fires and saving lives. You try to take my rights away, Stephanie, and you'll find out just how competent I still am. I've got all my medical records, testimony from my doctor about my mental state, and a will that's been notarized and witnessed. You want to fight me on this? Bring it on. But know that if you do, you'll lose whatever relationship we have left. Stephanie had hung up without another word. Tom sat in the silence for a long time after that, and when he finally spoke, his voice was broken. Blood is thicker than water, they say, but money makes blood thin as tea. Max, thin as tea. Now, lying here in this kennel with the sounds of approaching footsteps, I can't help but think about how right Tom was. The same daughter who'd threatened to have him declared incompetent is probably the one arranging for my final evaluation today. The same woman who'd fought tooth and nail for that $50,000 is now ready to dispose of the dog it was meant to protect. The lobby doors open, and I hear multiple voices. Sarah's nervous chatter. Dr. Martinez's professional tones, and underneath it all, Stephanie's familiar voice, sickeningly sweet like artificial honey. I just think it's time, she's saying. Max has been here over 1.5 years. He's clearly not adjustable to new situations. Sometimes the kindest thing is to, actually, ma'am, we have a potential adopter coming in today. My ears perk up. That's Sarah's voice, stronger than I've heard it in weeks. A potential adopter. Stephanie's tone sharpens. For Max. Who would want, who's interested in adopting him? A woman named Catherine O'Brien. She specifically requested to meet him, said she'd heard about his situation and wanted to help. The silence that follows is so complete I can hear my own heartbeat. Catherine, Tom's nurse, the angel he'd talked about with such reverence and gratitude. She's here. She's actually here. Catherine O'Brien. Stephanie's voice has gone very quiet. very careful. How did she find out about Max? I'm not sure of all the details, ma'am, but she seemed very sincere about giving him a home. Said something about honoring the memory of one of her former patients. My tail starts to wag before I can stop it. Tom's words echo in my memory. Angels who show up just when you need them most. Could it be? Could this be the miracle I've been waiting for? But Stephanie's next words pour ice water over my hope. Well, that's very kind of her, but I'm afraid it's too late. Max has been here too long. He's developed behavioral issues, anxiety, depression, probably some aggression. I can't in good conscience let him be adopted by someone who doesn't understand what they're getting into. Lies. Every word is a lie, and I can smell the deception rolling off her in waves. But who's going to contradict Tom Mitchell's daughter? Who's going to call her out on protecting her inheritance by eliminating the dog it was meant for? Ma'am, with respect. Doctor. Martinez interjects. Max hasn't shown any signs of aggression. His temperament evaluations have all been excellent. He's depressed, certainly, but that's completely understandable given his circumstances. Doctor. Martinez, I appreciate your professional opinion, but I know this dog. I know what my father would want. And what he'd want is for Max not to suffer anymore. The footsteps are getting closer now, and I can hear the jingle of keys. My time is running out. In minutes, they'll be standing at my kennel door, making the final decision about my fate. And despite Sarah's protests, despite Dr. Martinez's professional assessment, Stephanie holds all the cards. She's the legal owner, the one who signed the surrender papers. Her word is law. I think about Tom's last night, about his plan to call Catherine and ask if she'd consider taking care of me. I think about the $50,000 sitting in an account somewhere with my name on it. Money that was supposed to ensure I'd never end up in a place like this. I think about all the love I still have to give, all the walks I could take, all the quiet evenings I could spend being someone's faithful companion. But most of all, I think about loyalty, about what it means to keep faith even when faith seems foolish, about loving without conditions, without guarantees, without the promise that it will be returned. The footsteps stop outside my kennel. Through the chain link, I can see Sarah's tear-stained face, Dr. Martinez's professional mask, and behind them, Stephanie. She won't even look at me directly. Well, Stephanie says, her voice artificially bright. I suppose we should get this over with. But then another voice cuts through the tension, a voice I don't recognize but somehow feels familiar, like a memory from a dream. Excuse me. I'm looking for Max Thompson. I'm Catherine O'Brien, and I believe I have an appointment. My heart stops. She's here. Tom's angel is actually here, and the real battle for my life is about to begin. The woman standing in the doorway looks like she's stepped out of one of Tom's fondest memories. Catherine O'Brien is smaller than I'd imagined, maybe 5'4" in her sensible shoes, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, and the kind of gentle eyes that have seen both miracles and heartbreak. She's wearing a simple blue cardigan and carrying a worn leather purse. But there's something about her presence that fills the entire hallway with warmth. Mrs. O'Brien, Sarah says, relief flooding her voice. Thank you so much for coming. This is Max. Catherine's eyes find mine through the chain link, and something extraordinary happens. the moment our gazes meet. I smell it, that antiseptic and hope scent that Tom used to carry in his memories. But it's more than that. There's something in her eyes, a recognition that goes deeper than sight. Like she's seeing not just me, but the man who loved me. "Hello there, beautiful boy," she says softly, and her voice carries the same gentle authority I remember from Tom's stories. "You look just like your daddy described you." My tail starts wagging before I can control it. Daddy. She called Tom my daddy. Stephanie steps forward, her smile sharp as broken glass. "Mrs. O'Brien, I presume I'm Stephanie Mitchell Barnes, Tom's daughter. I'm afraid there's been some kind of misunderstanding." Catherine turns to face Stephanie, and I watch her expression shift subtly. The warmth remains, but there's steel underneath now, the steel of a woman who's fought death and won. "No misunderstanding on my part," Catherine says evenly. "Your father contacted me several weeks before he passed. We had a long conversation about Max and about his wishes for Max's future." The color drains from Stephanie's face. "My father called you about the dog, about his beloved companion," Catherine corrects gently. Tom was very specific about what he wanted for Max. He was also very concerned about certain family members who might not honor those wishes. The silence that follows is electric with tension. Dr. Martinez shifts uncomfortably, and Sarah's eyes dart between the two women like she's watching a tennis match where the stakes are life and death. "I'm not sure what my father may have told you," Stephanie says carefully, "but I'm Max's legal guardian now, and in my professional opinion—" "Your professional opinion," Catherine interrupts, her eyebrows rising slightly. "What profession would that be, dear?" Stephanie's mouth opens and closes like a fish out of water. "I meant as someone who knew my father's wishes. Indeed. Someone who knew his wishes so well that you had him declared incompetent when he tried to protect this dog's future. The accusation hangs in the air like a physical thing." Stephanie's face goes white, then red, then white again. "That's not... I never... How dare you? How dare I what? Tell the truth." Catherine's voice remains calm, but there's fire in her eyes now. "Your father was many things, Stephanie, but incompetent wasn't one of them. He told me all about your attempts to gain power of attorney. He told me about the $50,000 he set aside for Max's care, the $50,000 that mysteriously disappeared from Max's account 3 weeks after your father's funeral." My heart stops. She knows. Catherine knows about the money, about Stephanie's betrayal, about everything. Stephanie's carefully constructed facade crumbles like a house of cards. "You don't understand the financial pressures I'm under. My children's education, the mortgage." "I understand theft," Catherine says quietly. "I understand a daughter who saw her father's love for his companion as an obstacle to her inheritance. I understand a woman who would rather see an innocent animal die than honor her father's final wishes." Martinez clears his throat. "Ladies, perhaps we should discuss this in my office." "No," Catherine says firmly, never taking her eyes off Stephanie. "This needs to be said right here, right now, in front of the dog whose life hangs in the balance." She turns to look at me again, and her expression softens. Tom told me about the night you threatened to have him committed. Stephanie. He told me about the lawyer you consulted, the papers you tried to file. He told me how you hung up on him the night he died, after telling him his love for Max was a waste. Stephanie is crying now, ugly tears that carry no sympathy from anyone in the hallway. You don't know what it was like, watching him pour money into that account while my family struggled. Your family wasn't struggling, Catherine says with devastating calm. I looked into your financial situation after Tom called me. Your husband makes 6 figures as an engineer. Your house is paid off. Your children already have college funds. You weren't struggling, Stephanie. You were greedy. The word hangs between them like a sword. Sarah gasps softly, and Dr. Martinez looks like he wishes he were anywhere else. But here's what you didn't know, Catherine continues, reaching into her purse. Tom gave me copies of everything, his will, the account information, the police report from the night he died. She pulls out a manila folder thick with documents. He also gave me power of attorney for Max's care in the event that his family proved unworthy. She hands the folder to Dr. Martinez, who opens it with shaking hands. His eyes widen as he scans the documents. This appears to be legitimate, he says slowly. Legal power of attorney for the care and custody of Max Thompson, dated 2 weeks before Mr. Mitchell's death and properly notarized. Stephanie lunges for the folder. That's impossible. I would have known. You would have known if you'd bothered to visit your father in his final weeks, instead of just calling to argue about money. Catherine says, Tom was many things, but he wasn't naive. He knew exactly what kind of person you'd become. The revelation hits me like a physical blow. Tom knew, in those final weeks, when Stephanie was threatening him and demanding access to his accounts, he was working to protect me. He was making sure that no matter what happened, I would be safe. This is ridiculous, Stephanie sputters, but her voice lacks conviction now. I'll fight this. I'll take it to court. That dog was my father's, which makes him mine now. Actually, Dr. Martinez says quietly, still reading through the documents, according to this power of attorney, Max was never your property. Your father transferred ownership to Mrs. O'Brien 2 weeks before his death. The surrender papers you signed, he looks up with something that might be sympathy. You had no legal right to surrender him. The words echo through the hallway like gunshots. Stephanie's face goes through a rainbow of emotions, shock, rage, humiliation, and finally, a kind of desperate calculation. Fine, she says through gritted teeth. Take the dog, but don't expect me to help when he shows his true colors. He's been in this shelter for over a year. He's damaged goods, probably aggressive, definitely depressed. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Catherine looks at Stephanie for a long moment, and when she speaks, her voice carries the weight of decades spent fighting for lost causes. I spent 40 years as a cardiac nurse. Dear, I've seen hearts that were broken beyond repair put back together with patience and love. I've watched people who everyone had given up on make miraculous recoveries. And I've learned that sometimes the most damaged souls have the most love to give because they know what it feels like to be written off. She turns back to me, and her smile is like sunshine after a long winter. Besides, his daddy asked me to take care of him, and I never break a promise to a patient. The kennel door opens with a metallic click that sounds like freedom. Catherine kneels down slowly, her arthritic knees protesting, and extends her hand toward me. "Hello, Max," she says softly. "I'm Catherine. Your daddy told me so much about you. He said you like morning walks, and that you're the best fishing companion a man could ask for. He said you have the most beautiful soul he's ever known." I crawl forward hesitantly, hardly daring to believe this is real. Her scent washes over me, soap and lavender and something indefinably kind. When I finally work up the courage to sniff her hand, she doesn't pull away. Instead, she lets me explore, lets me learn her scent, lets me decide if I trust her. "He also told me," she continues, "that you've been the most loyal friend he's ever had, that you stayed with him on the night he died, that you never left his side even when you must have known he was gone. That takes a special kind of love, Max, the kind of love that deserves to be honored." Behind her, Stephanie makes a sound of disgust and storms out of the building. The slam of the door echoes through the hallway, but I barely notice. All my attention is focused on this woman kneeling in front of me, this angel who Tom somehow sent to save me. "What do you say?" "Handsome," Catherine asks, scratching gently behind my ears. "Would you like to come home with me? I've got a big backyard and a pond where the fish are just begging to be caught. I think your daddy would like that." For the first time in 547 days, I feel something I'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. The terror doesn't hit me until we're in Catherine's car, driving away from the only place I've known for the past 18 months. As the shelter disappears in the rearview mirror, something dark and primal claws its way up from the depths of my chest. My breathing becomes shallow, rapid. My paws start shaking uncontrollably. What if this is just another false start? What if Catherine changes her mind, like all the others? What if I'm too broken, too damaged, too much trouble for someone who's already lived a full life without complications? The memories come flooding back, not the good ones with Tom, but the dark ones from my early days in the shelter. The memories I've tried so hard to bury under layers of hope and determination. I remember my first night in that concrete kennel, howling until my throat was raw, scratching at the door until my nails bled. I remember the dog in the kennel next to mine, a sweet old golden retriever named Buddy who'd been there for 3 years. "Don't get your hopes up too high, son," he'd whispered through the chain link. "The older we get, the invisible we become." I remember watching Buddy disappear one Tuesday morning, led away by a shelter worker with kind eyes and a heavy heart. They said he was being transferred to another facility, but I was learning the shelter code by then. Transfer meant something else entirely. I remember the nights when the howling would start a symphony of abandoned souls crying out for the families who'd thrown them away. The sound would echo through the concrete halls like the wailing of the damned, and I'd add my voice to theirs until exhaustion finally claimed me. But worst of all, I remember the day I stopped howling, the day I stopped hoping. It was around month 6 when I realized that no one was coming, that Tom was really gone, that Stephanie had really abandoned me, that all my loyalty and love meant nothing in a world that valued youth and convenience over devotion and character. That was the day I died inside. My body kept functioning, eating, sleeping, going through the motions, but my spirit curled up in a corner and refused to come out. The shelter volunteers started calling me withdrawn and unresponsive. Potential adopters would take one look at my lifeless eyes and keep walking. He's shut down. I heard Dr. Martinez tell Sarah one day. Classic signs of learned helplessness. It happens to dogs who've been here too long. Learned helplessness. The clinical term for a soul that's been broken so thoroughly it stops trying to escape even when the cage door is open. Now, sitting in Catherine's passenger seat with the scent of lavender and hope filling my nostrils, that old terror is roaring back to life. What if I can't remember how to be a good dog? What if 18 months of institutional living has stripped away everything Tom taught me about love and loyalty and joy? Catherine glances over at me, and her expression immediately shifts to concern. "Oh, sweetheart," she says softly, pulling into a parking lot. "You're having a panic attack, aren't you?" She puts the car in park and turns to face me fully. Her movements are slow, deliberate, non-threatening. "It's okay. Max, what you're feeling is completely normal. Tom told me you might struggle with this." My ears perk up despite my anxiety. Tom told her about my fears. He said you were the bravest dog he'd ever known, but that you carried your heart on the outside where it could get hurt. Catherine's voice is soothing, like warm honey on a sore throat. He said that after his first heart attack, the one where I helped him, he had panic attacks too. Couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. She reaches into her purse and pulls out a small photo. It's Tom in his hospital bed, grinning at the camera despite the tubes and wires attached to his chest. Beside him, barely visible at the edge of the frame, is a figure in scrubs with kind eyes. This was taken the day after his surgery, Catherine says. The photographer wanted to do a story about cardiac recovery, and Tom insisted I be in the picture. Said I was his guardian angel. She touches the photo gently. But you know what he told me later? He said you were his real guardian angel. That coming home to you every day gave him a reason to keep fighting, keep living, keep believing that good things were still possible. Tears are falling down her cheeks now, and the salt scent of them mixes with lavender in a way that's somehow comforting rather than distressing. He also told me about your nightmares, she continues. How you'd wake up whimpering and he'd sit with you until dawn, talking you through the fear. How you'd have panic attacks during thunderstorms and he'd wrap you in that old quilt his mother made, the one that smelled like home. I remember that quilt. Soft blue and white squares that held the scent of Tom's childhood, of safety and unconditional love. I wonder what happened to it after he died. Max, look at me. Catherine's voice is gentle but firm. I'm not going anywhere. Not today, not tomorrow, not next week when you're still learning to trust me. Tom made me promise that I'd love you through the hard parts, through the fear and the healing and whatever comes after. She opens her car door and gets out, then comes around to my side. When she opens my door, I instinctively shrink back. Too much space, too many options, too many ways for this to go wrong. How about we start small? Catherine suggests. Just a walk around this parking lot. Nothing scary, nothing permanent. Just a chance for you to stretch your legs and remember what grass feels like under your paws. The asphalt is warm under my feet as I reluctantly climb out of the car. We're in front of a small park, nothing fancy, just some benches and a walking path around a pond. But after 18 months of concrete and chain link, it might as well be paradise. We walk slowly, Catherine matching her pace to my hesitant steps. She doesn't push, doesn't try to force interaction. She just walks beside me, a steady presence that asks for nothing and offers everything. "Tom told me about your favorite spot at Table Rock Lake," she says as we approach the pond. "He said you like to wade in up to your chest and just stand there, watching the water, thinking deep thoughts." She chuckles softly. "He said you were the most philosophical dog he'd ever known." There are ducks on the pond, and their presence triggers something deep in my canine brain. Not hunting instinct. Tom never taught me to hunt, but something more primal. A memory of being alive, of having purpose beyond survival. One of the ducks quacks loudly, and before I can stop myself, I bark back. It's the first sound I've made voluntarily in months, and it startles both Catherine and me. "Well, hello there," Catherine laughs, and the sound is like music after too much silence. "I was wondering when I'd hear your voice." But as quickly as the moment of joy appeared, the darkness comes rushing back. What if I'm too loud? What if I'm bothering other people? What if Catherine realizes I'm more work than she bargained for? The spiral of anxiety starts again, faster this time. My breathing becomes rapid and shallow. My legs feel weak. The world starts to close in around me like the walls of that concrete kennel. "Max," Catherine's voice cuts through the panic like a lighthouse beam through fog. "Max, listen to my voice. You're safe. You're with me. Tom sent me to take care of you, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." She sits down on the grass right there beside the pond, patting the ground next to her. "Come here, sweetheart. Let's sit together until you feel better." I collapse beside her, my whole body shaking with the force of emotions I've kept locked away for too long. Catherine doesn't try to hug me or restrain me. She just sits there, solid and warm and unafraid of my brokenness. "You know what Tom's last words to me were?" she says quietly. "He said, 'Promise me you'll show him that love doesn't always end in loss, that sometimes it just changes form.'" Her hand finds the spot behind my ears that Tom used to scratch, and the familiar touch unlocks something inside me. For the first time since that terrible October night, I let myself cry. Not the silent tears of institutional grief, but the deep, wrenching sobs of a soul that's been holding its breath for too long. Catherine doesn't try to stop my tears or tell me everything will be okay. She just sits with me in my pain, the way Tom used to do during thunderstorms, and slowly, gradually, the terrible weight in my chest begins to lift. Maybe this is what healing looks like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of someone brave enough to sit with you while you remember how to hope. "Come on, my brave boy," Catherine says eventually, helping me to my feet. "Let's go home. I've got a big backyard and a comfy bed, and I think it's time you remembered what it feels like to be loved." As we walk back to the car, I catch a glimpse of myself in a storefront window. For the first time in 18 months, my tail is wagging. Maybe Tom was right about angels after all. 3 months have passed since Catherine brought me home to her cozy house on Maple Street, and I'm starting to remember what it feels like to be a dog instead of just a survivor. The nightmares still come sometimes, but they're gentler now, and Catherine never seems bothered when I wake her up with my whimpering. She'll just pad down the hallway in her slippers and sit with me until the fear passes. But something strange has been happening lately, something that's got me more worried than excited. For the past 2 weeks, I've been noticing something different about Catherine's scent. There's a change in her body chemistry that my nose picks up but my brain can't quite process. It's subtle, so subtle that I'm sure Catherine herself doesn't notice it, but it's there every time I press my nose against her chest during our evening cuddle sessions. At first, I thought maybe she was just tired. Catherine's been working long hours at the free clinic downtown, volunteering her nursing skills to help folks who can't afford regular health care. "Retirement doesn't mean you stop caring," she told me one evening, scratching behind my ears as we watched the sunset from our front porch. "It just means you get to choose who you care for." But this scent change is different from exhaustion. It's something deeper, something that makes every protective instinct I have stand at attention. The smell reminds me of the time Tom had his second minor heart episode, a chemical change that spoke of cells behaving differently, of a body fighting something it couldn't quite defeat. I've been trying to get Catherine's attention about it for days now. Every time we sit together, I press my nose against the same spot on her left breast, just below her collarbone. I whine softly and paw at her cardigan, but she just laughs and tells me I'm being affectionate. "You're such a love bug, Max," she'll say, thinking my behavior is just canine affection. "Tom was right about you having the biggest heart. But this isn't affection. This is alarm. Every fiber of my being is screaming that something is wrong, that the woman who saved me needs saving herself, and I'm the only one who knows it. Today, the scent is stronger than ever. Catherine is sitting in her favorite armchair, reading a mystery novel and sipping her afternoon tea. When I approach her with more urgency than usual, instead of my gentle nose nudges, I paw at her chest insistently, whining in a pitch that I hope conveys the seriousness of what I'm trying to tell her. "Max, what's gotten into you lately?" Catherine asks, setting down her book with a confused smile. "You've been obsessed with that spot for weeks now. Is there something about my new perfume you don't like?" I bark once, sharply, and paw at her chest again. Then I do something I've never done before. I grab the sleeve of her cardigan in my teeth and try to pull her toward the door. Catherine's expression shifts from amused confusion to genuine concern. "Max, sweetheart, what's wrong? You're acting like Lassie trying to tell someone Timmy fell down a well." If only she knew how accurate that comparison is. That evening, Catherine calls her niece, Mary Catherine, the same MC who volunteers at the shelter where we met. I can hear both sides of the conversation from my spot beside Catherine's chair, and I listen with growing hope that maybe, finally, someone will take my behavior seriously. "MC, can I ask you something about Max? He's been acting strange lately. Very focused on one particular spot on my chest. Keeps pawing at it, whining. Even grabbed my sleeve today, trying to drag me somewhere. That's odd. Aunt Kate, has he been doing anything else unusual?" "Not really. He's been perfect, otherwise eating well, sleeping through the night, even playing a little with that tennis ball I bought him. But this chest thing has me puzzled. There's a pause on the other end of the line, and I can almost hear MC thinking, Aunt Kate, you know I'm not a vet, but I've heard stories about dogs detecting medical issues before their owners know about them. Their sense of smell is thousands of times stronger than ours. Maybe you should have Dr. Wilson take a look, just to be safe. Catherine's hand stills on my head. You think Max is trying to tell me something's wrong with my health? I think Max loves you and wants to keep you safe. Whether that means there's actually something wrong or he's just being an overprotective dog, wouldn't it be worth checking? For your peace of mind, if nothing else. After Catherine hangs up, she sits quietly for a long time, her fingers working through my fur in the absent way that tells me she's thinking hard about something. Finally, she speaks to me directly, her voice soft and serious. Max, are you trying to tell me something important? Something about my health? I look directly into her eyes and bark once, then paw gently at the spot that's been worrying me. Catherine's hand moves to cover mine, and for a moment, we just sit there, woman and dog, both understanding that something significant is happening. Okay, boy, she says finally. I'll call Dr. Wilson tomorrow and schedule an appointment, but if this turns out to be nothing, you're buying the next bag of dog food. The appointment is scheduled for the following Wednesday, and I can tell Catherine is more nervous than she's letting on. She keeps touching the spot I've been indicating, as if trying to feel whatever it is that my nose has detected. Her sleep is restless, and her appetite is off classic signs of anxiety that I recognize from my own recovery process. On the morning of the appointment, Catherine dresses carefully in her best blue dress and brushes her silver hair until it shines. She's putting on a brave face, but I can smell the fear on her, sharp and acrid underneath her usual lavender scent. Come on, Max, she says, clipping my leash to my collar. Dr. Wilson said you could come with me for moral support. Seems you've earned the right to see this through. The medical building smells like antiseptic and anxiety, reminding me uncomfortably of the day Tom was taken away in the ambulance. But this time, I'm not helpless. This time, I'm part of the solution. Dr. Wilson is a kind woman in her 50s with gentle hands and a no-nonsense attitude. She examines Catherine thoroughly while I sit in the corner, watching every movement, listening to every word. Well, Catherine, I have to say I don't feel anything obvious, but given Max's persistent behavior and your nursing background, I think we should do some imaging just to be thorough. The mammogram is scheduled for that afternoon, and the wait feels eternal. Catherine and I sit in the lobby, both of us tense with anticipation. She keeps looking down at me with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. You know, if you're right about this, she says quietly, you'll have saved my life the same way I helped save your Tom's life all those years ago. Wouldn't that be something? When Dr. Wilson calls us back into her office an hour later, her expression is serious but hopeful. Catherine, I have to tell you Max was absolutely right. We found a very small mass, less than a centimeter, in exactly the spot he's been indicating. It's so small it might have gone undetected for months or even years during routine screenings. The room seems to tilt around us. Catherine's face goes pale, then flushed, then pale again. Is it? We won't know for certain until we do a biopsy, but given the size and location, if it is malignant, we've caught it incredibly early enough that treatment should be very effective. Catherine looks down at me with tears in her eyes. Tom told me you were special, Max, but I had no idea how special. Dr. Wilson kneels down to scratch behind my ears. You know, in 40 years of medicine, I've heard stories about dogs detecting cancer, but I've never seen it firsthand. Max here might have just given you the gift of many more years together. As we drive home that evening, Catherine is quieter than usual, processing everything that's happened. Finally, as we pull into our driveway, she turns to me with a smile that's equal parts wonder and gratitude. You know what this means, don't you? Max, Tom sent you to me. And now, you've saved my life just like I helped save his. It's like some kind of beautiful circle. Like all of us were meant to take care of each other. She reaches over and cups my face in her hands, looking directly into my eyes. I promise you something. My brave boy. Whatever happens with this diagnosis, whatever treatment I need, we're going to face it together. No more shelters. No more abandonment. No more fear. Just you and me, taking care of each other the way family should. For the first time since Tom died, I feel truly, completely safe. Not just physically safe, but emotionally whole. I found my purpose again, not just as a companion, but as a protector, a guardian, a dog with a mission. Tom was right about angels. Sometimes they come in scrubs, and sometimes they come with 4 paws and an unshakable loyalty. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they save each other. 2 years have passed since that frightening day in Dr. Wilson's office, and I'm sitting on our front porch watching the most beautiful sunset Missouri has ever painted across the sky. Catherine is beside me in her favorite rocking chair, her fingers working through my fur in that absent way that means she's content and at peace. The surgery was successful. They caught the cancer so early that she only needed a lumpectomy and a short course of radiation. Clean as a whistle, Dr. Wilson declared at her 6-month checkup. Thanks to the best early detection system I've ever seen. Today marks the 2nd anniversary of what Catherine calls our Gotcha Day, the day she walked into that shelter and changed both our lives forever. But this anniversary feels different, bigger somehow, because we're not celebrating alone. The local newspaper is here, along with a crew from the Springfield television station. Word got out about my cancer detection abilities, and suddenly everyone wants to hear our story. But more importantly, they want to hear about the Tom Mitchell Memorial Fund for Senior Dog Adoption that Catherine established using the $50,000 we recovered from Stephanie's theft. It's only fitting, Catherine told the reporter earlier. Tom set that money aside to ensure Max would be loved and cared for. Now we're using it to ensure that other senior dogs get the same chance at happiness. The fund has helped place over 30 senior dogs in loving homes over the past 2 years. Each adoption comes with a support package, veterinary care, training resources, and a 24-hour helpline for new adopters who might be struggling with the adjustment period. Catherine likes to joke that we're running a senior dog rescue operation, but I know it's much more than that. We're proving that love doesn't have an expiration date. MC approaches us carrying a clipboard and wearing the biggest smile I've seen in weeks. As the fund's administrator, she's been working tirelessly to match dogs with families, and her success rate is something that would make any professional proud. Aunt Kate, you're not going to believe this, she says, settling into the chair beside us. We got a call this morning from a shelter in Kansas City. They've got 3 senior German Shepherds that were surrendered when their owner went into assisted living. The family specifically requested that we help place them because they'd heard about Max's story. Catherine's eyes light up. 3 shepherds. How old? 8, 9, and 10 years old. All healthy, all well-trained, just victims of circumstance. MC glances at me with affection. Apparently, the owner told the shelter staff that if Max could find happiness again, so could his dogs. I think about those 3 dogs, probably confused and heartbroken, wondering what they did wrong to end up in kennels instead of living rooms. I remember that feeling so clearly, the bewilderment, the sense that loyalty had somehow become a liability. But I also know something those dogs don't know yet. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the doorway to the best thing that ever happened to you. The reporter, a young woman named Jessica, leans forward with her recorder. Mrs. O'Brien, what would you say to people who are hesitant to adopt senior dogs? Catherine rocks slowly, considering her words. I'd tell them that senior dogs don't need to be trained, they need to be healed. They don't need to learn how to love. They need to remember that it's safe to love again. And, in return, they'll give you a depth of gratitude and devotion that you simply can't get from a puppy. She looks down at me, and her smile could power the whole state of Missouri. Max didn't just save my life by detecting my cancer early. He saved my soul by showing me that it's never too late for a second chance at happiness. After my husband William died, I thought my life was winding down. But adopting Max taught me that sometimes your life doesn't end when you think it does. Sometimes it just begins a new chapter. The television reporter asks about our daily routine, and Catherine launches into a description that makes our quiet life sound like the greatest adventure ever undertaken. She talks about our morning walks around the neighborhood, how I've become the unofficial greeter for every dog we meet. She mentions our weekly visits to the local nursing home, where I've become something of a celebrity among the residents who light up whenever I walk into the room. Max has this gift, Catherine explains, for knowing exactly who needs him most. Last week, he spent an entire hour sitting with Mrs. Henderson, who's been struggling with depression since her husband passed. By the time we left, she was laughing and planning what treats she wanted to buy for his next visit. What Catherine doesn't mention is how those nursing home visits help me too. Being needed, having a purpose beyond just being a pet. It's what Tom would have wanted for me. Every time I comfort someone who's grieving or lonely, I feel like I'm honoring his memory, carrying forward the love he gave me as the sun begins to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. More people start arriving for our anniversary celebration. Sarah from the shelter is here, along with Dr. Martinez and several other volunteers. But the most surprising guest is someone I never thought I'd see again. Stephanie pulls up in a modest sedan, looking nervous but determined. She's lost weight since I saw her last, and there are lines around her eyes that speak of sleepless nights and hard-won wisdom. Catherine stiffens beside me, and I can smell the spike of adrenaline that comes with old conflicts. I wasn't sure you'd want me here, Stephanie says, approaching slowly like someone who knows they're not entirely welcome. But I needed to come. I needed to apologize. Catherine's hand finds my head, and I can feel her struggling between old hurt and the possibility of forgiveness. Stephanie. I know I don't deserve it, Stephanie continues, her voice shaking. But I've been going to counseling, working through some things. I realize now what I took from you. From Max. From my father's memory. She looks directly at me, and for the first time, I see genuine remorse in her eyes. I'm sorry, Max. I'm sorry I let greed blind me to what really mattered. She reaches into her purse and pulls out a small wrapped package. I found this in Dad's things last month. I should have given it to you sooner. But she trails off, unable to finish the sentence. Catherine unwraps the package slowly, and inside is Tom's old leather collar, the one he wore in his firefighting days, decorated with pins from every fire station he worked at over his 30-year career. But attached to it now is something new, a small silver tag engraved with words that make Catherine gasp. For Max, she reads aloud, her voice thick with emotion. The best partner a man could ask for. Love never dies. It just changes form. Tom Mitchell. The silence that follows is heavy with the weight of forgiveness and redemption. Catherine looks at Stephanie for a long moment, then at me, then back at Stephanie. He had this made before he died? Catherine asks. Stephanie nods, tears streaming down her face. The engraver said Dad came in 2 weeks before he passed, said he wanted Max to have something that would remind him every day how much he was loved. Catherine stands slowly and walks over to Stephanie. For a moment, I think she might turn away, might let the old hurt win. But then she does something that would make Tom proud. She opens her arms and embraces her stepdaughter. Thank you, Catherine whispers. Thank you for bringing this to us. As the evening winds down and our guests begin to leave, I find myself wearing Tom's old collar alongside my new one. The leather is soft with age and carries the faintest scent of Old Spice and wood smoke smells that will always mean home to me. MC is the last to leave, and she stops to scratch behind my ears before heading to her car. You know, Max, she says quietly, you've changed more lives than you'll ever know. Every dog we place, every family we help, every senior dog that gets a second chance, that's all because of you. As Catherine and I settle into our evening routine, she reads aloud from a letter that arrived yesterday. It's from a family in Arkansas who adopted one of our dogs, a 10-year-old beagle named Charlie, who'd been returned to the shelter 3 times. Dear Mrs. O'Brien and Max, Catherine reads, we wanted you to know that Charlie has settled in beautifully. Our elderly father, who'd been struggling with loneliness since Mom passed, now has a constant companion who seems to understand exactly what he needs. Yesterday, we found them both napping in Dad's recliner, and we realized that sometimes the best things in life come with a little gray around the edges. Catherine folds the letter carefully and looks down at me with eyes that shine with unshed tears. You know what I think? Max, I think Tom knew exactly what he was doing when he brought us together. 3 broken souls, him, me, and you, and somehow we've all learned to heal each other. As we watch the last light fade from the Missouri sky, I think about the old saying that started this whole journey, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But sitting here with Catherine, wearing Tom's collar and carrying the weight of all the love I've given and received, I know that saying is wrong. You can teach an old dog new tricks. The trick is learning that love doesn't end when life gets hard, it just gets stronger, deeper, more precious. The trick is understanding that sometimes the best chapters of your story begin when you think the book is ending. And the greatest trick of all, learning that home isn't a place, it's wherever someone loves you enough to never give up on you. No matter how old or broken or scared you might be, as Catherine likes to say, it's never too late for a miracle. And miracles often come with 4 paws and a wagging tail. Amen to that. Dear friends, if Max's story touched your heart, you're not alone. Like Max, many of us over 55 have felt invisible, forgotten, or written off as too old for new beginnings. We've watched younger generations get the opportunities while we're told our best years are behind us. But Max's journey from a shelter kennel to becoming a life-saving hero proves that our most meaningful chapters often begin when the world thinks our story is ending. Tom's love didn't die with him, it transformed, flowing through Catherine to Max, and then back again when Max saved her life. This beautiful circle reminds us that the connections we make, the love we give, and the wisdom we've earned through decades of living are not burdens, they're gifts. Every gray hair represents resilience. Every line on our faces tells a story of survival. And every year we've lived has prepared us for the possibility that our greatest purpose still lies ahead. Age doesn't diminish our capacity for love, loyalty, or making a difference. It deepens it, deepens. What second chance moment in your life surprised you most? Have you ever felt like the world counted you out, only to discover your most important role was still waiting? Share your story below. We'd love to hear how life surprised you with unexpected blessings.